of the art of that one.
All right,
That's the only difference.
it is 10 o'clock.
Thank you for that. Phil.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. If you would rise for the pledge, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. So we are open to public forum. There's a 3-minute limit. If you would come up, give your name and where you're from. And, oh, so come on up.
Denise Weiss, Royalton Township. I want to start by saying that on December 5th, I received a letter from the Minnesota Department of Ag. And it does state that only cannabis sativa that meets the definition of hemp is a U.S. agricultural crop. Marijuana is defined as still a controlled substance. So I want to turn that in. I received a letter on December 6th from Heidi Lindgren. She's Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and does the water permits for our area. And she does state that the Mount Simon Hinckley Aquifer is off limits. So I'd like to turn that in. I also have the information from OCM stating that they aren't in charge of the aquifers and that has to be delegated to the local government. And I'd like to turn that in. Leslie Stoddard from Pine County, I reached out to her, asked about the industrial sites to see if anybody has been in contact with Mr. Zappa. And her email to me is that I have not been working with Mr. Zappa, nor has he reached out to me. So if we are bringing in, $13 to $17 million businesses, it should be according to Minnesota Department. According to the OCM, these should be in industrial zoned areas. Why isn't our industrial people aren't reaching out to them? I'm just gonna touch base because I'll hit more on the public forum. The third draft, per the regulations, we have no zoning. We haven't issued any zoning for any of the things from draft 1 to draft 2. We had it in draft 1. Now we have no zoning. And even per the rules of the Minnesota Cannabis Department, where the zoning should go. Interim permits, we've lost those also. We've also lost light mitigation. That hasn't come back. It's for some, but it's not for all. It should be for all. So those are the things that I'd like to hit for highlights, asking questions to the Lord. Why don't we have the zoning in there? The OCM has recommended that to protect communities and to promote this. They know more than we do. Why did we drop it? Seems to be for a specific individual and not necessarily for the whole, because it was dropped after the first draft, which I wasn't a part of, but Wright County, Stearns County, St. Cloud, Stillwater, Hastings, they all have this draft and they all have in industrial zoned areas. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for public forum? Come on up, Jesse.
My name is Eileen Krupp, and I'm a resident of Pine County. I just want to say, when you're incumbent commissioner and you're opposed, you're an incumbent commissioner and you're opposed. Being reelected means the residents you represent are happy with the job you've done. But this recognition for a commissioner who has served all of the residents of all of the districts. Even though the board has been disrespectful, we want to thank you, JJ, for representing all of us, all of the time. And I have an award from you from the residents here. The 2024 Pine County Commissioner of Excellence Pine County Residents Award is presented to JJ Walden for his commitment and dedication to providing service for all the residents of Pine County, Minnesota. Thank you, JJ.
Thank you. Oh, gosh.
there anybody else who would like to speak at public forum? All right, we have some people online. Danielle, would you like to go first? If you'd state your name and where you're from, and then you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, am I unmuted?
Yes, you're good. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. Thank you. I just want to check. Good morning, members of the Pine County Board of Commissioners. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak this morning. I'm here to address significant concerns about the conduct of the local sheriff's department, particularly in how they have mismanaged cases, demonstrated bias, and failed to uphold the standards of accountability that our community deserves. Over the course of my interactions with the sheriff's department, I have experienced firsthand their inability or refusal to follow proper procedures, specifically elected Sheriff Jeff Nelson. He has shown a troubling disregard for established policies. Despite my repeated attempts to resolve the matter at hand, he has refused to work with me in good faith. His conduct not only undermines my rights, but also erodes public trust in the department as a whole. This is not just about one individual. It's about a pattern of behavior within the department that appears to prioritize personal bias over professional responsibility. When cases are mishandled or dismissed unfairly, it leaves citizens like myself feeling powerless and unprotected. Our law enforcement officers have a duty to serve without prejudice and to adhere to the policies meant to ensure fairness and justice for all. I am calling on this council to address the sheriff's department lack of accountability. We need better oversight, clearer enforcement of departmental policies, and consequences for those who fail to uphold their duties, not 6% raises. The people of this community deserve transparency, equity, and a sheriff's department we can trust. I want to thank you for your attention to this matter. I hope the council will take immediate steps to investigate these issues and to ensure that no one else in this community has to endure the same treatment I have.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person I have on the list is Joe Zappa.
He may
Oh.
want to speak for the public hearing for the cannabis ordinance.
Did you want to speak later for the public hearing, Joe, or did you want to speak now?
Exactly. I was just going to wait for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trent.
Madam Chair, also wait for the public forum on cannabis.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will go on to adopting the agenda. We have some additions and corrections.
Madam Chair, members of the board, if we could add consent agenda item number 3C, a temporary liquor license for the Minnesota Climbers Association for January 10th through 12th. And if we could add regular agenda item number 12, commissioner updates, Commissioner Ludwig with the District Court Security Committee update. And if we could do a revision to agenda item 5A, the septic fix-up special assessments, and add Matthew and Jamie Tevitt. And then there's additional information for the Personnel Committee meeting. The Personnel Committee met yesterday due to the scheduling of the AMC conference. And so those minutes from yesterday's meeting are added.
Perfect. Are there any questions on the agenda? We have a motion to.
One question.
Okay, go ahead, JJ.
Added with that is this drawing. What was that for the?
Yeah, that's part of the update for the courts, District Court Security Committee meeting. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, then
Are there any other
make a
questions?
reference to.
All those in favor for the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
A
carried.
motion?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, we did not have,
I'll make-
okay, we had a question.
Make a motion.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
I'll second.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, we have a motion to second. Let's get any questions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carried. Approve the minutes of December 3rd and the summary for publication and the December 5th truth and taxation minutes. Are there any questions? Thanks, Matt.
I'll second.
Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, motion by Matt, second by Josh. Are there any questions on those? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Minutes of Board of Committee and Correspondence. We've got the HRA EDA minutes from November 27th. Are there any questions on any of that?
I'll move them.
Thanks,
Okay.
Josh. Was that you, Matt?
Second.
Josh and Matt made the first and the second. And once again, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then we have the consent agenda with those additions on there or that addition on there. Are there any questions on that? The consent agenda? All right, can we have a motion to accept it?
I'll move.
Who was that you, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, got a motion by Steve, a second by
I'll second.
Josh. One more time, are there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are on the regular agenda and we are going to have a public hearing on ordinance 2024-58 to regulate zoning and adult use cannabis business activities. Kelly's going to do the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Member of the Board, Kelly Schroeder, County Auditor Treasurer. And so before you today, you have ordinance 2024-58, which is the zoning of cannabis businesses before you. We had reviewed it at the December 3rd meeting and there were some requested changes. So I really just kind of wanted to quickly, unless you have questions, walk through the ordinance as it is today. There's a few points of discussion maybe we can have and go from there. So as we look at the ordinance, page 1 is is exactly the same as it was the last time that you saw it. It's really just kind of formality type stuff
Not visible.
of
Edge not visible.
our authorization to adopt the ordinance and such. But on page 2, section 1.5 is where the definitions begin. And we really looked for any of those terms that may have questions within the ordinance and tried to define them within the ordinance. I know there were some questions that came forward, for example, on meso businesses and micro businesses since the last meeting, as to why the definition is what it is. Because when you look at statute, the definition is slightly different. Statute highlights these hemp things that they can do and this lower potency stuff they can do. However, I took that out because this ordinance does not address that. And I did double check with Reese that that was acceptable. So that's why those definitions do not perfectly match the statute because I took out the not applicable items. I do want to highlight item D on page 3 though as well, cannabis retailer. The very last sentence there, it says the retail portions of meso businesses and micro businesses which occur on the same property as the cultivation and manufacturing activities are not included in the definition of cannabis retailer for purposes of this ordinance. And I know Reese had a question about that. One of our zoning board members had a question of that, of why is that? And the reason that that was in there is because as you work further into the ordinance, you'll see we're treating retail differently than meso and micro businesses. And so the reason that's in there is if it's happening on the same property, we don't want 2 different sections of the ordinance to apply. We really just want the one that requires that administrative permit to apply. So that's why that language is in there. I did ask Reese for a little bit of more clarification if that was acceptable this morning, which I don't know if you had a chance to look at that. And so hopefully that doesn't cause confusion because, for example, in our business registration ordinance, it's clear that micro businesses and meso businesses, the retail portions of those are treated as retail, which, yep, I agree for that ordinance. But with this ordinance, we wanted to make sure that we knew if it was happening on the same property, it would just be regulated under which section. Stop me if you have questions. As we continue further through the ordinance, I think that's all I wanted to highlight for the definitions. Once we get to page 5 is where the actual zoning meat and potatoes is. And again, we split apart those larger indoor cultivators from the smaller indoor cultivators and outdoor cultivators. So as you'll notice in 2.1.1, we had the discussion last time, should it be a conditional use or should it be an interim use? And I think the consensus was that we wanted it to be an interim use now. For now, as we start to learn about these businesses and maybe in later dates, we can think about something different, but for now we'd want it in interim use. Otherwise, all of the performance standards are exactly the same as we discussed on December 3rd. I don't know if anybody wants to go through with them individually or not. The one new item of the performance standard you'll notice is actually on page The bottom of page 6, item N, and this was a suggestion from the last meeting, was that businesses operating under that section shall be subject to zoning inspections on a routine basis. So that allows us to conduct inspections at whatever interval we feel necessary. And then item P is one item that changed as well, but based on the discussion at that last meeting. So previously, item P had said that only one license of any type is allowed on the property. And then there was a suggestion that maybe we should allow those licenses to be able to be stacked. So if I have a cultivation license, could I also have a manufacturing license on that property? And so after that meeting, we did change it so that those licenses could be stacked in that manner. Is that truly what you want? I don't know, and that's for you guys to decide. And something to highlight that was changed, and it's actually a pretty big change, because before you had just one small business on the property, and now you could have multiple businesses and make it a pretty large business on one property. Section 2.1.2, you'll notice, does have that language in there that it's an annual administrative permit, so it's renewed every single year. And then within this section, I just went through and ensured that any of the applicable performance standards from the first page, from the big indoors, applied over in this section. The one difference, of course, is that cultivation activities that are occurring under the section has that setback from neighboring residences of 250 feet. And so that was in there the last time you saw it with that 250 feet. But that is a difference from the big indoors don't have that setback. Otherwise, I think it is pretty straightforward in that section. So just a reminder, this section kind of encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses those small indoors, any outdoors, which includes those mixed light facilities that are greenhouses or hoop houses. It includes mezzo businesses and micro businesses as well. So it's a lot lumped into that one section. And so as you go down to, you'll notice that there are some sections that don't apply to all of those, like E, no lighting used to promote growth of cannabis or cannabis products is allowed for outdoor cultivation in a field type setting. Well, that only applies to those outdoor field type settings. It doesn't apply to all of them. And then again, page 8, I added item L that noted businesses operating under the section shall be subject to zoning inspections on a routine basis again. Just to ensure that we had that in there as a condition, very clear when they get their permit that will happen. And again, then as you're moving forward to item O, on the top of page 9, that language was also changed because previously it was only one license of any type was allowed on the property, and this allows multiple types of licenses on the same property. Moving on to section 2.1.3, I did note a change that didn't get made in the copy that's in the packet that we had talked about on December 3rd. So you'll notice it says that the manufacturer shall be permitted as an interim or conditional use. In the final drafts, that would just be an interim use permit. It wouldn't have that or in there. Because I think we all decided that interim was the way to go. That just was a change that was missed. Otherwise, I think that moving forward through that section, everything is very similar to what we discussed, except for once you get down to that item K, where we talk about the number of licenses on a property. And then 2.1.4 is exactly as we had talked last time. So if it's truly just retail, then it defaults back to whatever underlying ordinance there is and allows it to be managed under that, because that's retail is a routine thing that zoning's used to working with. Otherwise, any questions on any of those sections?
Head JJ. Did you have a question? You look like you do.
You look like you have a question.
Well, I just want to give everybody else an opportunity to go first. Nobody else?
So I have a question on this, and mine is the number of licenses that you're allowed to get. When we started, it was one license per parcel. So you could be a grower, you could be a manufacturer, you could be a transfer, and there's 16 different licenses. So after we had talked about having more, and I know that it was talked about that sometimes you're gonna need to have more licensing, or it would be desired to have more licensing. I did talk to Kelly, and the zoning administration, she felt their idea was that you would have one, so you can either grow or you can manufacture on a parcel. I think opening it up to the fact that you can have more is gonna open it up to having a huge business on that parcel of land instead of a business. Do you know,
No edges visible.
do you see what I'm saying? Is that making sense? So if you can grow, you can cultivate, you can manufacture, and you can sell, and you can do all of those on a parcel of land. We went from having a facility, a business on that land to having a huge thing going on that land. And I don't know if that's where we had really intended to go with this. Josh.
Would it be possible to limit said to 3 or whatever? I'm just throwing a number out there.
Right.
Because you said there's 16.
Right, which they're not all applicable to property necessarily, like a transporter. I mean, I can legally transport it, but that's not anything we're really gonna deal with in zoning.
And is it something that some of them are not stackable, like as far as the licensing goes? Are there some that don't work with others or type of deal?
Reese is shaking his head, yes.
That's correct. So it's vertical integration, so some are not vertically integrated, but some of the smaller ones, like the micro businesses are, so you can have manufacturer and retail.
Okay. So you're not necessarily gonna have 16 on one property, but you could have 8 or whatever. I don't know.
Right, and like the mezzo businesses and micro businesses, that's all within one license.
And that's state.
Right.
Yes.
Kelly or Reese, Madam Chair. If you're a micro business, you have to stay under,
5,000 square feet of indoor,
okay, how many?
5,000 square feet.
5,000. If you're 6,000 square feet,
Now
Is
it
that
becomes
different?
something else.
now you're something different.
With the little caveat of unless OCM decides that they can do it. Yes, that lovely language is in the statute.
Could change it.
Right here on the first, you start reading it right from the page 1. Background information, December, they're okay. The first thing states, the permits will be interim use, not interim or conditional.
What page are you on?
Right here.
It's on your agenda request.
Oh.
I think it should read not permitted or conditional.
Okay,
I mean, so right out of the gate on the first page, we have something so that doesn't make any sense, right? The permits will be interim use, not interim or conditional. So
Yeah.
a typo.
No,
Okay, that's.
No, I mean, there's no-
Not on the actual resolution or not on the ordinance.
Yeah.
That
So the-
was the request to this board, but
Will be interim, not interim.
right, so it should be that they will be interim, not conditional or.
saying it's not.
And the other one was interim or conditional, so this, so she's saying this, she's referring back to it.
I got you. Okay. All right. There's nothing in here, like, in regards to a buyer's card. I've reached out to our state, I've reached out to our Senate, I've reached out to our House. They don't seem to have their mind wrapped around that either. Why with alcohol, you have to have a buyer's card to transport it, move it around the county. It's separate. You handle them, correct?
Right.
Yeah, you need.
City limits.
Yeah, and how many hundreds of them are there in our county that have to be managed and it's a big deal. You cannot operate that business without one, period. It doesn't matter if you're in good standing with your city, your township, your county, ATF, FBI. If you don't have it, you're shut down.
Right, that's what those statutes, the
so
legislature, those
still-
statutes say.
Our state still can't give an answer to that. The bonding requirements changed here. At first, I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, we all agreed to raise it and now it got lowered.
Well, on October, at that October 1st meeting, it only had those bonding requirements in for the big indoors. And I don't believe it had it for the others. And then we added it for the others and came up with kind of different amounts because acknowledging those businesses, the the outdoors and the smaller micro and meso businesses, they're just smaller, so the need should be less. The cleanup need and that type of thing should be less on those properties, just because the businesses are required to be smaller. So that's why there's that break in those bond amounts for the different types.
Okay, and then when it comes to the industrial park, you know, we taxpayers, we already pay for that. We've already established it. It has its own set of rules. There are rules of things you can't put in industrial parks because of the restrictions, okay? But yet, from everything I'm understanding and looking, this is the spot to put a grow facility is in an industrial park. It's just my opinion, just how I understand it. What now, are we gonna do anything in industrial parks to change restrictions and let different things in there if we're gonna let this fly in somebody's neighborhood right next to their house?
Right, and so we don't have, like, the county does not have any industrial parks ourselves.
No.
And we don't even have zoning districts in most areas ourselves.
Right, we have the luxury of our economic coordinator. Yeah, I mean, she works also with the city of Pine City, correct? She contracts with them and is also, I see a very good working relationship there, but yet there's hasn't been any communication with them. And there is acreage there, there's parcels. I think there's even a rail line. If they want to make big round bales of it, they could probably ship it out of there.
We don't have any jurisdiction over what the city zoning
It
is.
has city of-
That's their.
Right, but don't we have some say of where this can go? I mean, if logically we don't let this be allowed.
You asked if we can change their zoning. We don't have a right to do that.
City.
And then the last thing is if it's at 500 feet, we lowered it to, or it's proposed to get it even closer to neighbors.
Right, the first draft had it at the 500 feet, and then it was brought to light that 500 feet, I mean, a standard 10-acre property is 660 feet wide, or even 330 feet wide, so then you've really taken out even 10-acre properties or sometimes 20-acre properties by making it that 500 feet.
Sure. Okay, so it is definitely.
But if the board wishes it, it can pick any number it wishes as long as it's a reasonable restriction.
Okay. You haven't received anything from the state at all in regards to the buyer's card that you need to move beer, wine, any tobacco?
Right, so that buyer's card is specifically in the liquor statutes, and there is a buyer's card in the cannabis statutes.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
So, we had a little conversation about the distance, and it actually seemed like we were more restrictive than most. And part of that was, the type of zoning, was it? I think I had a conversation with you about,
Right,
in a lot of places, the type of zoning, they allowed it in different, if in different zonings, that's why the.
so Pine County's interesting, and we don't have zoning districts in, we only have zoning districts in 4 out of 33 townships. And so if, for example, we said you have to be at least 500 feet from a residential zoning district, great, that only applies to 4 townships. And so as a way to still recognize a want for a setback, we looked at actual houses, because there's a lot of things that are zoned as residential or whatever have you that don't have actual houses. And there's houses that are in non-residential areas. So we're looking at actual buildings and making sure we have that buffer around those existing houses.
And this site we're always talking about here, how many other businesses are in that? I'm not too familiar with that end of the county. How many other businesses are down there? I mean, like any other business other than like
Down where?
farms in this township?
Right.
In Royalton Township.
Yeah, where this whole place is going.
I would have to run some
Okay.
data. But we also need to be adopting the ordinance not for specific projects or properties. We need to think about it as a whole.
Right. And
Yeah, and technically, we don't have zoning authority in Royalton Township.
Well, the way that this is written is it would cover all townships unless they had their own zoning ordinance that was at least as strict. So Royalton Township very well could go adopt something different that's more strict, and then this doesn't matter.
And Madam Chair, so it applies zoning as an overlay district, not by creating individual districts. So typically you would have an industrial, residential, et cetera, and then you would have listed uses. This, since we don't do traditional zoning in most of the county, this approach was to apply it as an overlay district with performance standards. And so you're, in order to implement a preference as to how it would be managed or the business run, you have to do it through the performance standards, not through the traditional zoning type of requirements. If that's at all helpful, Josh.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, if we did nothing, then are we required to do something or can we do nothing?
If we did nothing, we'll get requests when the state's going to license them. And then we have to come up with an answer of, does it conform to our current zoning or not? And you end up in this kind of gray area. Is you could twist words around in our current ordinance and say, yep, it fits right there. Or you could say, nope, it doesn't belong anywhere in Pine County, but then you're not imposing reasonable restrictions either. And so, I mean, there is an option of do nothing, and maybe we go back to the drawing board and only adjust like the county zoning ordinance, but then it will only apply to those 4 townships plus 3 cities.
Right, Madam Chair, we really have to do something because we do have zoning in 7 municipalities or townships. So we have to do something. We just.
Yeah, that something doesn't have to be this though. That something could just be a few little quick amendments to our current zoning ordinance to point those businesses to where we want them to be.
Right.
Well, I would make a formal request by our county to, I guess it's the Department of Transportation is the entity that takes care of buyers cards, correct?
I have no idea. It's all through the state. They just have to have one.
It's just, I just see a future struggle with any business, doesn't matter where it's at. It is the type of business and the product they're moving that they just can't seem to get an answer given or a rule or something to go by. So I would just as soon hold off on this until Rarick, Nelson, Seth send something back. I have emails out there.
I think that, Madam Chair.
I don't think there's a hurry.
DJ, I don't know if I think that would be a legislative priority, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Something that's not in the statute.
Right.
I mean, that's the answer. Well, I would assume we would get back from those.
So the thing is that this is going to be changing again and again and again, but we need to get something in place before January when the social equity licensing are going to start supposedly to take place.
They
Supposedly.
They aren't doing that anymore.
What?
I do not believe they're doing that anymore.
Oh,
It's
okay.
pushed back.
It's not us that made the rules. I think we all agree.
So, Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead. Yes.
So there's a public hearing today, and so the purpose of this round of questions was to get clarification on the ordinance as it's proposed. And so if you were satisfied, you could open the public hearing, get public comments, and then you could bring it back for discussion and any consideration of as to what you might want as far as adoption, modifications, not adopting, et cetera.
So are there any other questions for Kelly? Okay, so we will open up thank you, Dave. We will open up the public hearing. If somebody would like to come up and speak, let's do online first. We've got 2 people hanging out online. Joe, I think you were the first one on the list that we had before.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, and we are doing 3-minute time limits for this also. So if you want to state who you are and where you're from and then go.
Sure. So thank you. Did you want me to go?
Yes, please.
Certainly. So thank you for having me, Joe Zappa. I'm a tenant at 7440 Cabin Drive in Royalton. a couple of points to address really concerns that were raised. First and foremost, I support the ordinance as written. I think they did a really nice job. Regarding the section O in 212, where we talk about, I'm sorry, my apologies.
The performance bond?
No, the actually, the only one cannabis license of each type allowed per parcel of land regardless of the number of owners. I think what's important about that is when you look at 212J, if I'm looking at the right one. Oh, where'd it go? My apologies. I have it.
The license requirement shows up on page 7 as letter P towards the top, if that's what you're looking for.
Oh, here it is. It's J of 1.5 in your definitions where you say packaging and labeling mature. Cultivation includes harvesting cannabis flower from mature plants, packaging and labeling mature plants and seedlings, and cannabis flower for sale only to other cannabis business. Here's the important part. Transporting cannabis flower to a cannabis manufacturer located on the same premises. The point is you don't want multiple manufacturers there. You don't want multiple cultivators there. That could turn it into a very large business. You could have 2 30,000 square foot cultivators or 2 4-acre cultivators, not sell this in a big business. But having a cultivator and a manufacturer is something that the state actually supports and allows for. It's something that will be applying for both a cultivation and a manufacturing license. And the manufacturing is really simply that we're considering, for your edification, is really just processing the cannabis down to an oil or to a ingredient that could be used by then other manufacturers. So that's why I think it's important the way you wrote it. I think it's effective. I think it says we don't want, a pile up of multiple cultivators or multiple manufacturers. But if somebody has a cultivation and a manufacturing, it makes sense. It's efficient, security-wise, transportation-wise. You're not moving it from one part of the county to the other. On the transportation front, for your edification, they do have a whole section in the rules about transportation and licensing of transportation. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about with the buyer's card, but they're going to be watching very carefully on who's transporting what, where, when, and how we record it and track it. So I think it's even going to be more restrictive than liquor transportation. But again, if you want to continue to do research there, I think it's fine. Finally, there was a question of the lighting brought up by another.
Joe, your time is up.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention to you, just to be pro of fairness, I have the same amount of time.
Yeah, I was timing them. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Joe. Thank you. Then we had Trent. Are you still online?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. And with me, of course, my better half, Mariah, is also with us today as well.
Hello, Madam Chair and Board. I'll be making public comment today. I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you've done on this ordinance over the last few months, and I'm in support of supporting the ordinance as written. I did want to tag on to what Mr. Zappa said about limiting vertical integration, and that the state statute is written that way, and even in section 342.23 through .46, each cannabis license has limitations stated there as well. So that is all I have to share today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. We have nobody else online, so if there's anybody from inside the building that would like to speak, come on up, Denise.
I'm Denise Weiss. I have questions on page 5, under the 20,000 square foot or greater. A water meter must be installed to monitor water usages of the facility. We do not have that for facilities under 20,000 square feet. 20,000 square feet is a pretty big facility. We have no metering for that. I also want to look at 20,000 or greater. You don't have to have tarps on the structures. Anything under 20,000 square feet, you got to have tarps for light mitigation. Should be equal for both parties. It also states when it says business operating in this section shall be subject to zoning inspections. What zoning are these facilities gonna go in? Again, according to the last draft that just came out, page 16 of the OCM, their zoning is in indoor, industrial, commercial areas. That's where they recommend these go, not next to homes, not buying a hay field that's cheaper in price that you can build something on. And then you can grow your facility. These can grow and they can get bigger. And, you know, all of these recommended to be in that type of zoning. And we eliminated that. So yeah, there's some things that I think really need to be looked at. Because you're putting these next to houses, 250 feet away from a home. 30,000 square foot facility, a 20,000 square foot facility can go in a home, next to a home. That's why we have industrial parks. We can't do that with any other type of industrial business. Why are we allowing it for this, especially when it's still federally illegal?
Thank you, Denise. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to speak today? Unless.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Dave, something that's getting overlooked here quite a bit.
Les, can you tell us who you are?
I'm Les Forrest. I live in Royalton Township. Part of what we're missing here is we're never talking about economic development. We encourage economic development if you like the business or not. That's the thing I don't hear anything about in any of these meetings. We try to bring it back. It's not industrial, it's commercial. We'll move on that. I implore you pass this, get it done. But is it any difference that anybody who runs any other type of business out in the country? A business is a business. You know, there's gravel pits, there's commercial excavating, there's wineries, there's welding companies. They're all out in the country. They're all doing the same thing. There's been 20,000 foot welding company out in Royalton. And so I look at the business aspirations and we don't want to change business away. We want to invite them. That's why we put this ordinance together, is to invite them with some restrictions. That's our job. We need to move forward with that. And on the other hand, the being mean part is we're being beat up by less than 1% in Pine County that doesn't want this to happen. So I think with the business aspiration, the economic development, I hope we move forward with this. We all know it will be changing sooner than later, and I think we're going to be ready for that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Les. Is there anybody, come on up.
Patrice DeGray, regarding that 1%, you know, but people know about politics at all. And most people don't, I mean, all people don't even know there's a meeting going on today or what's being discussed here. Now, I know, because we don't have countywide zoning, I understand this, and that's correct. If the county lists anything as industrial, as the state OCM recommends, and most counties are requiring, no township will have the opportunity to make a zoning ordinance that would say anything can be, you know, wherever it wants or has to be. They could say it has to be zoned industrial. But if you guys say that, then the townships don't have a choice. I understand that. The ordinance, this ordinance was a complete waste of time for the townships who fought in the past for their township zoning. And if townships want any ordinance with any meaning, they all need to hand over their zoning to the county. You're right on that. So if they want any teeth in that, the township secretary turn it over to you. Otherwise, all this kind of zoning is a waste of time. If any township prefers to have some say in where these cannabis businesses will be located, check with the township, Pekegama. They have their own written right now. Otherwise, some of us in Royalton, have one written that we'll share with any township who's interested. And that, the other question is in here, it says that our zoning in a township will have to be approved by the county. What happens if we don't agree with the county? And we can't change it to be appropriate for them. Does that mean a lawsuit or what? I don't know. Everything's a lawsuit. So anyhow, thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Thank you so much. Coming up.
Gary Goldwater, Royalton Township.
Wait, gotta get to the mic so people can hear you, Gary.
What's that?
So you gotta get to the mic so people online can hear you.
Gary Goldwater, Royalton Township. Again, I have to correct Mr. Orvis. It was 81 names on a petition that was drawn in what, 3-4 days? For that special meeting. Out of, we've got registered voters around 800, so it's numbers are closer to 10% in 3-4 days. Most people are apathetic. Most people are trusting this board, trusting the township to come up with something. Don't know what people's ideas are. I am appalled, I guess. I don't mean to judge or anything, but if there's so much for it, are there that many druggies in this neighborhood? That scares me. In my neighborhood, in my section that I live with, that this is going on. 1/4 mile, 3/8 of a mile off the end of my property, something like this going on. It concerns me. It concerns my property value that in your comprehensive plan, that's one of the things that you're interested in. And also, like I pointed out, the prevalence of drugs, property values. When you talk about 250 feet or 500 feet from a house, it really should be, if a person's got a lot here that he wants to sell and it's zoned, all of a sudden that property value goes down. It should be from any property that's zoned residential. And that's my plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Come on down.
First, I apologize for being late to the wrong building, but I also was tied up in a long conversation with the commissioner and I wasn't quite ready to leave. So, I think the 500-foot rule is.
Name and where you're from.
Stanger, Royal.
Keep that.
About that. I think the 500-foot buffer is very important. You have a business that requires security and lights and it's labor intensive. Even if it's only an acre or 2 acres, you need 20, 30 people out there working. That's the minimum, 500 feet. The infrastructure, what's a gravel road rated for trips per day? 50. So you take any of these gravel roads, they're all 5 ton, they're rated for 50 trips a day. They're basically anybody in a residential agricultural area right now. Because of deliveries, they're at their max right now. So they really should be on the blacktop. Now you're in the manufacturing, really should be in the industrial. And it's out wherever it's out, it's inside of people that can keep watch of it instead of hid back in the woods. Because Pine County has some very resourceful thieves and it's not if, it's when they will hit those places. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Anybody else who would like to speak? One more time. All right, public forum is closed on the cannabis. So we will go back to the closed public hearing. We closed the public hearing. We're going to go back to additional discussion for the board. I'd like to say one thing. We're looking at this as a whole county, not as a township. So we need to keep that in mind that it's based on a whole township or a whole county. So Please, Josh.
Madam Chair, I just, couple quick things, and I think these maybe were for Kelly. And I thought I had clarification on this, but maybe not. Are we being more restrictive on smaller operations than we are bigger operations, like the light mitigation and stuff like that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. So no, so the regulations that are in the big indoor regulations are basically just copied over to the smaller indoor operations with a few things gone, with a few less regulations. One thing that Denise did point out that was something interesting to think about is for the big indoors, we have this language of all permanent sided, hard sided structures used for indoor cultivation using artificial lights shall be shielded so no light escapes. That language, and that language did not make it over to the small indoors and the mesos and the micros. So, I mean, that's a change that we could make if you so choose. But otherwise, the regulations in that smaller indoor and outdoor is less, you don't have the water meter, you don't have that green energy requirement. The impervious lot surface is not in the smaller one. So the smaller ones have less regulation and the smaller ones are an administrative permit, whereas the bigger ones are a interim use permit, which includes a public hearing.
Okay. The other question I had was, what other kind of overlay zoning do we do in the county? Similar to this, what potentially could be?
Yeah, so I mean, we have, for example, our subdivision ordinance is, and it doesn't look at any zoning districts outside of shoreland. It says, countywide, these are the requirements. Townships absolutely can have more strict requirements than that. So subdivision, for example, septic, but I mean, septic and shoreland are things that, are similar, that we do them countywide, but those two are required by state statute. They're not options, where like the subdivision's an option. I think even like our adult use ordinance does kind of follow the same suit. That's the adult use ordinance is what kind of had this, got this concept moving was, the county did something countywide without focusing on zoning districts.
I'm sure.
Yes.
So my questions would be about the setback. So we were originally at 500. So did we, or was that changed because of we were being unreasonable? That we felt we were being unreasonable? And the reason I ask that is if a place out in anywhere is designed for residential, there could be lots of plotted things already or whatever, and you have one in the middle. Maybe it's a good thing that they can't be there. Do you know what I mean? So where I'm going with that is there a more reasonable setback that would make it so it doesn't happen in a residential area?
I'm sure. Matt, I think I was told that 500 feet was just grabbed out of midair. That's where that number came from.
No, I was,
So it was just
I think
made up.
I'm part of this discussion though, so, and I don't remember it being changed to 250, but I think I was probably there. I probably didn't hear, but
Yeah.
The statute says we have to have reasonable restriction when we do our ordinances. So, and I think that's what we did to make it reasonable, I'm assuming. So is it possible? Or is there, I hear a lot about setbacks, and that makes sense to me, so to deal with it, that's what we have to do. So how do you do a case by case in an overlay if you're, because you're gonna have a residential or whatever, or could it be denied on the interim use or the conditional use if it just doesn't fit with setbacks? Or do we have to have a set parameter that we can say it has to be no less than 200 feet or 250 feet or wherever you're at, and then we're not going to enforce anything more than 500 feet. So there's room. I don't know what that is. I'm just trying to figure out a way to resolve that issue. Am I making any sense there?
I think so, not just so that you don't have a hard number in there, you have a range.
Yeah, I think if we created a range That, so if it's a densely populated place already, we would say, well, it just isn't gonna fit. But we, you know, is that something we could do in a statute, is create a range?
We can do any reasonable restriction, but I guess I'm looking at
Or
this a little bit,
ordinance, I should say.
with putting a range in there, does that?
And
Matt, I understand.
It'd be difficult,
what you're
but
asking,
I
but
know.
I think we put unreasonable pressure on the zoning board and our staff to determine, is that 3 houses or is that 4?
Well, I think they would see that anyway. So I'm not trying to make more work. Otherwise, we just say we have to be stricter and say, hey, it's 500 or whatever, 400, or we change that minimum. I'm just trying to figure out a way to make it usable in some place.
Madam Chair.
Do you want to talk into your mic so they can hear you?
I think we went to 250 because of the unreasonable clause, because if you have 10 acres and you take 500 feet from all 4 sides, you don't have enough room to have a structure. And so we went to 250. So there's a place in the middle that you could actually do something. And I think that solved the reasonableness.
Okay. So which would make it not happen in a lot.
Yeah, if you had a 2-acre lot, you can't make it work.
Just like to add to that, with the 1,000 feet rule, like in alcohol to a correctional facility. And in here, what is it, 500 feet to a school? If you take away from these numbers and the actual footage, there's been businesses that have been turned down for decades because they just couldn't make their land work for what they were doing. That's why we provide other places for them to do their business. You're not denying them the right to have a business. It's just, it's not going to work where it is.
I understand that part, but I also then wonder what happens when somebody wants to raise petunias in a 400 or 4,500 square foot greenhouse, which would fall under, and they don't have all the curtains and they don't have a water meter.
They're gonna have to have a smaller greenhouse.
I'll treat the petunia people.
It's already smaller than the micro business, but are we setting ourselves up for something that we don't, it's the unintended consequences that always get
The
us.
state seems to put 500 feet everywhere when they did their statute, so I'm comfortable with that.
So you saying, Matt, that you want to change it to 500 feet from 250?
I think it would benefit the public the best, to me.
That's a motion. I'd second that. I mean, if we're piecing this together and trying to fix it, we're gonna do piece by piece.
Was that a motion, Matt? To change it from 250 to 5?
I just think 100 or 250 is not. 500 isn't. That's just where I sit. I think a 500-foot setback is good.
I thought we already went down that road and went from 5.
I know, but I'm still there.
50.
But I join you.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to satisfy.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Josh.
this doesn't have to be done today again.
I know.
So, but, and I don't know,
Residents could be 400 feet.
getting into making motions to put a ordinance together is, you know, but
I'm fine with the rest of it. It's just a setback issue.
but that is something that could be changed in the whole ordinance as well. And explain to us again, maybe why it was changed again. I mean, the hard thing is I think we're hung up on this specific property. And we're not looking at just this specific property. We're looking at the whole county, and I think that's where it's very near and dear to a lot of people's heart on this specific property. But unfortunately, or fortunately, you could look at it either way. We got to look at the whole county, not just this unique instance. So, but again, what was, I mean, and maybe is there an example out there? By licensing, my guess is if in, Cross Lake Preserve, if I decided I want to put a manufacturing facility, I can't put it there, or, right somewhere, so I don't think it's that, it's other things, correct?
Right. And just to kind of go back why it was changed from the 500 to the 250. So remember, it's not setbacks from the property lines, it's setbacks from the neighboring houses. And so when you looked at that 500 feet and you look at a 10-acre property or even a 20-acre property, 20 acres are usually 660 by 1320. When you take 500 feet, if the neighbor's house is really close to the property line and you take 500 feet, you've now made a 20-acre property almost unusable. But maybe that's what we want to do.
I'm sure.
Go ahead, Gigi.
I mean, it seemed, I agree with Josh 100%. I mean, we got to look at the whole county, but if you do this in the one township down there, it opens it up to the rest. So I agree, you got to look at the whole county. The other thing about setbacks, and if someone puts their house in close proximity to the property line, that's already established. City of Sturgeon Lake, I believe, is 17 feet. If you have a piece of property and you happen to be there first and put a well, a shallow well, a Sandpoint well in, you limit your neighbor from putting a sewer within 100 feet if the well is less than 50 feet deep. If it's, we have these safeguards in place. You take away from that, and I agree with what Matt's saying here, the 500 feet. The house was there, the line is there. There was a local government in the next county up, Carleton, that wanted to build a big liquor facility. They even purchased the land, did all the infrastructure, everything. They didn't realize that it was within 1,000 feet of the nearest property line of a facility. That's the rule. That's the statute. That's the law. That's it. Numbers matter.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Josh.
The other thing is can you put one of these facilities in a residential area? I mean,
And so the way that this is written, because again, we don't have zoning districts in 29 out of 33 townships. So it doesn't look at zoning at all. It looks at proximity to, like this section, proximity to houses.
where a lot of them, where it would have to be zoned commercial or industrial, where that way, that them other safeguards would be already in place as far.
Potentially.
Yeah. And that's where it gets difficult to do, where we don't have the zoning already.
So, well,
You gotta be unique.
can I jump in here with you? So, like Dave said, we're setting a performance standard that we think is it's just a general performance standard. If a township decides they want to have a 500-foot setback, they can do that. They can be stricter than ours. Maybe it's their job. I don't know. But I'm thinking about all the townships out there that ask us to help. So, and most of the feedback I'm getting is the setback. Really, the setbacks. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm making these, I don't mind this discussion at all.
No, I don't either. I think it's great. Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Steve.
My question all along is the reasonableness, and I look down at Reese because at some point, if we make the restrictions more restrictive than are reasonable, then we open ourselves up to, I don't know, whatever. And I don't know if that makes us more unreasonable. And that, somebody says that is completely unreasonable, and we spend our next 6 months or 6 years in court, that becomes an unreasonable burden upon our system.
I'm sure.
Wait,
Finish.
he
No, that-
was asking
that-
Reese a question, so let's see if Reese has an answer for his question.
I mean, I'm Chair, I'd agree with what you said. I mean, basically, it's really a community standard of what is reasonable. That's why we have these discussions, and at some point, you place a limit. If the limit is placed to discourage anybody from using a property, then I'd say that's unreasonable. And then you really do open yourself up for litigation and having that, that provision declared against Minnesota law.
There was the social equity provision was eliminated by the state. Could we touch on that? What was the social equity portion trying to accomplish? That was trying to set something of fairness, right, at a much higher level? Or
Madam Chair, so basically, what the law said was it gave first mover opportunities to individuals in certain groups. So it included people that had a prior marijuana conviction, included veterans and others. And I guess I don't know what the phrase was, like marginalized communities or something like that. And so this was, again, this is the state law. It said that these people can have first mover advantages. And so they allowed these licenses before the rest of the interested businesses could get them. What happened was that there was a court case. I can't remember who the parties were that sued, but a judge stayed that and basically put that on hold and said, okay, we're not doing social equity right now until this court case is resolved, which basically effectively eliminates it because the whole point was to get the social equity in before the beginning of the year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'm sure. What I think is there's very, very much not clear in the statute. But what's clear is we can't stop it and we can't be unreasonable with it. And then were the only really clear things about it, which is extremely frustrating because the restrictions, I mean, just unreasonable or I mean, I can't imagine any attorney that loves that definition or a rulemaker, but that's where you're on such a uncertain or unreasonable. And then to just hand it down to counties, townships, cities that don't have the resources to try to navigate what the legislature is trying to figure out or trying to do it sucks. So I guess that's my just comment on that. But the unfortunate thing is we can't just say no, I think a lot of people just like to say no and we can't, this is probably the best way to safeguard what we're gonna do. And I was just not to jump ahead, but at AMC, I went to some stuff and even listening, the one clear thing coming out is this law is gonna change and it's gonna change probably a couple more times by, and that's, yeah, that's another thing that's frustrating. But in the meantime, we're left to deal with it and move forward.
More thoughts?
I just have one. It's more of a comment. I think we should try to pass this thing today, and I don't want to be here all day. So I want to know if I'm comfortable with how we feel as a board, that we know the townships asked us to do something. And we said we would do something. And we did do something. And I'm only hung up with the $250 foot setback. And I originally was comfortable with that until I heard feedback. And I think I'm more comfortable now when I know if a township wants, I mean, I know it, but it's a lot of work, but they can make their own rules in the township to make it stricter setback, right? So we're just setting a basic guideline. And if they want to be stricter, they can. And then it'll be on the individual township's decision to make that call. So as I think it through out loud.
Yeah, I think we all think out loud a little bit here, but Madam Chair, can I ask Matt about that range idea you had a few minutes ago?
I know it'd be great if we could do that.
maybe that would get us over the hump. What's your mind think, Kelly?
I think it just creates a mess though for.
It does, but
Yeah.
we got a mess, we were dealt a mess. And maybe, by July, the mess will be clear enough that we can put a hard number there.
Well, anything we do today, we can amend. But I think we need to get something done.
I agree.
So I agree with you. If we went 250 feet, the townships can get strict.
I'm okay with it, but I'm gonna have to hold my nose.
The other thing I'd like to go back to is how many licenses per parcels. Do we want to limit that to 2 or 3 licenses per parcel? The thing is, you can be stricter now and you can be more lenient later. But once we get started, I'd like to look a little bit more into that.
And to be clear,
JJ, on those licenses.
Madam Chair, on the license thing, to be clear, it's
I know one license.
one type of license per
You what?
property though, right? I think that's,
No, we're flying blind
we
on
only
it.
have one manufacturer, one.
Right, the way it's written today, it's only one type, so it's not that I can get 4 cultivation
Yeah.
licenses, it's that I have
That's what I was.
one cultivation, one manufacturer on the same property. Or do we want it so that it can only be one cultivation?
I can't get my mind around that, because to me, it's like,
So
if I'm raising corn, I can raise corn, but I can't, combine it and put it in a truck and haul it to the feed mill? Or I can't put it in is there any relationship there? I don't understand it.
yes, there is. That's a good comparison. Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So a question for Kelly. So on the multiple licenses, if I hold more than one license for a parcel, I have to get an interim use permit and I would have to,
Well, depending on what your licenses are for.
okay, I'm sorry. So if I'm a large operator of
Yeah.
20,000 square feet or more, then I would need to come back and get an interim use permit, which could be revisited in future years. And if I were under 20,000, I would just have to meet the performance standards.
Right, and get that annual permit.
It's true. You do have to go through it every year. So maybe it's not going to matter. I don't know.
And Madam Chair,
Oh,
one more performance standard that I did hear from some folks was the light mitigation.
yes.
So I don't know if there's more conversation on that.
So I do have a silly question on that. We do have a hoop house. Was there a reason that we took it out that they don't have to deal with light mitigation on the existing? I know that it's harder and I know that it's expensive, but
Right, so the reason that was taken off was, I mean, the question came is it reasonable? Because to mitigate an existing greenhouse becomes very, very expensive, very fast. And so was that reasonable to say you had to put all of this money into an existing greenhouse? Where if they're gonna do that, then they're likely gonna just have to replace it and then they have to do it anyway, so.
You get to that unreasonable.
Yeah, you get back to being reasonable.
we're gonna find out what people think is unreasonable soon, I think.
And along those light mitigation lines though as well is we have that light mitigation that's required for hard-sided structures in the larger ones. That is not required for the indoor smaller ones. And so maybe we want to pull that over. And what that is if it's, for example, in a coal shed with that clear, whatever the material is at the top that lets sunlight in. So that language just says that if it's in a building with clear sides, it has to have that light mitigation. So even with it, if it's just that little top 2 feet or whatever it is they do.
Okay. What do y'all want to do?
Sure.
Go ahead, JJ.
I'd still like to listen to what our representatives can get me in regards to buyer's card, transportation, moving it. I heard Mr. Zappa say that he thinks he knows it's actually, transportation might even be, or could be more strict. But I guess I can't go on that, and neither can the other 100 or so businesses that, deal with, you know, the bar or restaurant. You gotta go by the rule. You can't, and I know they haven't made a rule yet, but they have been changing things quite a bit.
I understand.
It makes no sense. It's just to see this long, other businesses, and to leave this important piece out.
I understand your desire for that, but I don't think that any of our representatives are gonna be able to give you an answer because they haven't done that yet. So, just hold off for that purpose. They can't give you an answer until they change the statutes and make the next change, which hopefully it will be a part of that. But right now, we don't know.
Would we want to, wait till after the first of the year?
No,
No?
I think the township wants to get something done. And I think, yeah, I'll try something. I will make a motion to approve this ordinance as is. Is there a resolution for it?
So I don't want you to approve it as is, though.
Huh?
I don't want you to approve it as is. Just one specific change that we need to make is in the manufacturer section. The
Okay.
copy you have says interim or conditional use, and we want that to say interim use. So in
Okay.
section 2.1.3.
Okay. With that, I will move that resolution with 2024-58. With us to look at it and have more discussion about it. I want to keep the discussion out on setbacks and amend it, but I want to get something done for the townships today. So that's a caveat I'm gonna, but it goes with that, the way you explain. So I'll make that motion to approve that.
Right, so we have a motion by Matt. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Steve. Is there any more questions or comments on this?
I have one, just briefly here, an overview from the Minnesota Commissioner of Public Safety in regards to buyer's cards. Says, Minnesota Commissioner of Public Safety can revoke a buyer's card for a licensed venue if there's evidence of the violation. A violation could include selling alcohol to an unlicensed person, lending or permitting a person under 21 to use their license to purchase alcohol, convicting a person under 21 of purchasing alcohol with a false ID. To obtain a buyer's card, an applicant must be 21 years old at least, have a good moral character and reputation, not have had a license revoked within the last 5 years, not have been convicted of a felony within the last 5 years, not have been convicted of a willful violation of local, state, or federal ordinance related to alcohol. Buyer's card is valid for 1 year and is automatically renewed when the liquor license is renewed. Just wanted to add that for record.
All right, any more discussion?
I guess I'd just like to say one other quick thing is the unfortunate part is the legislature handed us this. The unreasonable stuff that I guess that's my sticking point, however you want to say it. Because the unfortunate thing is if we make it unreasonable, we've been in this situation where we've had to make tough decisions. And potentially with lawsuits, I think back to a few things at library, other things to that effect where we've had to make decisions to move stuff forward that none of us like. And just because unfortunately we got to deal with that kind of stuff and to stand here, to sit here or whatever we're doing here. And think that somebody ain't gonna challenge these even the way they are and probably say this is unreasonable just the way it is pretty naive to think that. I was not on board with this or any of it. And unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to be on board just because we have to do something. Hopefully to sit here and say, well, let's wait till the legislature does something. Well, what are they gonna do? We have no idea. This could take years for that to figure out. January 1st, they don't even convene till after that, so that makes 0 sense. To throw in anything about alcohol makes 0 sense, because until they change that law to make it more towards there, that's not cannabis. However way you want to shape form it, whatever. So, I guess that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. It is a hard spot, isn't it? They put us into. So we have a motion by Matt. A second by Steve. Once again, are there any questions? It's to do the ordinance the way that it was proposed with the change that Kelly made, that it's interim, it's not interim or conditional.
So, Madam Chair, just as a point of order, there was some discussion about potentially modifying the setback or the light mitigation. If you wanted to do that, you would want to propose an amendment before you vote on adopting the ordinance. I don't know whether anyone wants to do that, but once you vote to adopt the ordinance, then you couldn't amend it. So does that make sense?
Say that one more
Sure.
time.
Sure. There had been some discussion about 500 feet versus 250 feet. There's been some discussion about light mitigation. If you wanted those provisions in the ordinance, you would want to propose an amendment to amend the ordinance before you vote on the ordinance. Because once you vote on the ordinance, that becomes the ordinance, and then a change would require a public hearing and something in the future. So I don't want you to take a vote on ordinance and say, well, can't we change the setback or change the light mitigation?
I get it. So it was just so we don't have to have a public hearing if we're making it. Right.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just have heard conversation. I don't know what the majority of the board prefers, but I don't want you to take the vote and then go, oh, I wanted to change the setback.
Yeah, I don't mind if we have another public hearing because we might learn stuff from it.
It's a matter of if.
It's when, we could.
Changes that are gonna come down. I mean, we know that there's so many things that are unquestionable, like the buyer's card. That type of stuff. There's so many things that they didn't deal with because they have not a clue what they're doing, right? So we know that there's gonna be changes.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that advice.
All right, so we have a motion by Matt, a second by Steve to approve ordinance 2024-58 with the correction that Kelly was talking about.
The interim.
On the interim versus conditional. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carried. All right, so now we have another public hearing on the 2025 fee update schedule. Does anybody want to take a quick break?
Yeah.
Let's call 5-minute break, everybody.
Unreasonable things where I. Ridiculous, but it is, but I just don't know how you can. Other than, I would less, like I said, the way it's written. People that say that's unreasonable.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you get in the unreasonable category if it starts saying, business and trying to zone that person out. Or like you kind of talk about the range, you give one person 250, another 500, if there isn't any of that criteria, that's completely. But yeah, it's a whole.
So just to screw a lot of us now.
Yeah.
To screw us.
Yeah, well, that's what we were just talking about, is this unreasonable thing is just, that is where.
It can't be if other counties and cities and.
Head on next week, Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
They've already been approved by them.
Is that a straight flight?
Yeah, you can do it in many ways. You take Sunbelt straight. They are just waiting on.
In at.
Waiting on permitting, building permitting. That's as far as interesting, you know, everything takes time. Permits and see firsthand. You gotta slow it down even to a much slower pace.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
No, we changed our mind.
So do they have, like, phones?
Oh, yeah, then actually, you gotta abide by the maritime. There's also, you know, keeping your eye on the coach, your back. Yep. Or you have a city street. Where it's your neighbors to deal with. Yep. And like you think, you know, there's some days that are off that we're working with right now. Actually, we own more than we thought.
It's not true.
Which is interesting because all the documents show exact where.
Undocumented.
Yeah, it's down there, in that aspect.
Things.
And, you know, the ordinary high water, so to speak, hasn't changed, the city street hasn't changed.
Well,
Somebody gained it's far, but if you go property over, they didn't.
I don't. It's like.
Oh, they didn't. Oh, this case, the guy gets more actually. And to me, it's just a simple question, well, can you show me where it came from?
Yeah.
It comes from here, it didn't come from this. It comes from ours, here's our documents. It's from other vendors. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much in the schedule, you gotta move it down. And let us, you know, get on our livelihood. But nothing we can't work. with.
Hey, Kelly, everybody's.
My brother almost they creeped out on the island, right for the woods.
I don't even know where we are anymore. Is this my DD?
No,
That's yours?
where's my one?
Again.
Madam Chair, to the board, Kevin Porter, County Auditor Treasurer.
Oh, you know.
Okay, the meeting's reconvened, guys.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
All right, so before you today, I have our fee schedule changes. And so I just wanted to talk through those proposed changes. Page 2 of the agenda request had a list of those, what the current fee is and what the proposed fee is. So I just wanted to talk through those and then answer any questions you had. So in the assessor's office, we're requesting the CAMA data request fee to be increased. So previously it was 3 cents a parcel, and we're asking that it goes to 5 cents a parcel. And then the CAMA request setup fee, just that's the flat fee that every single request is charged, is currently $10, and we're asking to change that to $50. And so what that request is, for example, the MLS, for example, the multiple listing services that realtors use, they request all of our CAMA data on houses. So year built, square foot, bedrooms, bathrooms, they request files with all of that information in it. And then they use it on their site, however they use it. And so currently, I mean, they're getting an entire file that shows, I mean, every single shed on the property, the dimensions of the shed, the year built of all of this stuff. And currently for the entire county, that costs them about $1,100. And so it's an enormous amount of data that they're getting at a very small cost that they're making a very large profit off of. So we're just asking to increase that a little bit. It's not going to be a huge increase really in the grand scheme of things to them. But that is those first 2 requests from the assessor's office. They go together.
May I add to that?
Yeah.
So when I worked there, a lot of what we do is, we enter all that information into the system. And so we're paying for our staff to do that. We have to pay for the computer program to do that. This is a way to get some of that money back for all of the time and the money that we've spent to have those systems. So it's just a nice way to be reimbursed for what we've put into it.
And there's not a lot of those requests that come, maybe like 3 a year. And they're those big national companies that request it. Moving on to the auditor treasurer's office. So the top 2 involve the retail registration of cannabis. So there could potentially be some businesses that are coming forward for registration. And in the statute, it provides the option for us to charge a fee. So I would think that we would want to do that. In the statute, it says that for the initial registration, it can be $500 or half their license cost, whichever is greater. I just struggled with that half the license cost piece because I don't know what the state's doing. So it seemed easier to grasp that $500, and we can always revisit the fee schedule should it be significantly more revenue that we could be picking up. But again, there could only be 3 in the county to start with anyways. And then after their initial registration, they have to renew that annually. And so again, the statute provides that we could charge $1,000 or half of that registration or their license costs. So it seemed easier just to grab that $1,000 as our renewal fee, which that won't be for a couple years still, but it just seemed easier to get that on the fee schedule with the new registrations. So that's what those top 2 are. So that's why current fee, it says not applicable, because we currently don't have a fee that applies for cannabis registration. You'll notice the next ones down are these name, address, legal listings. And these are near and dear to Terry's heart, because this was something that she worked with people on, of providing these lists, whether it's name, address, legal description listings of the entire county, of a single jurisdiction, name, address list, tax amounts, values of the entire county or a single jurisdiction. So we had these fee schedules. And those worked well with our old AS400 system because they were canned reports. However, now under our new system, there really isn't a canned report that I just get to push the button. I have to build a report with whatever data they want on it. So these canned reports really are no longer. So what I'm requesting is that we switch from that fee schedule to this other fee schedule, which is tax data request per parcel fee or per, and the setup fee. So it really matches that assessor's information. And it just allows me to really create them a report of whatever they need of tax data, and charge them a clear price for that, because our current fee schedule doesn't, it's not conducive to the new system. So that's in the auditor treasurer's area. In Health and Human Services, we have 2 new fees to establish, which are the diagnostic assessments and then the 1 session or 2 or more sessions. So if we remember, we have that new staff member, which Becky can highlight more if you have questions on that, but are providing these diagnostic assessments. Those are the assessments that people like just to get in the system need to get. And previously the wait for those is very long time. So now we have a staff member that can do them. And so we need a fee to go along with that. So
Who pays that fee then?
is it an insurance billable? Yeah, so we're billing insurance for that. Moving on to the family childcare license renewal. Previously, we had $100 fee on this. If you think back a couple years, actually, we were waiving the fee for these renewals because we had a grant. However, that expired in April of last year. And so this $100 renewal fee was back on our schedule. However, the state now is actually the one who's going to be collecting these license renewal fees. So it doesn't need to be on our fee schedule anymore because it's going through the state now. And same with the psychotherapy 30-minute session, 45-minute session, that kind of goes hand in hand with those first 2 we talked about in Health and Human Services. Of those are new services that we're going to be able to provide and bill insurance for. Moving on to solid waste, just a couple updates that we've got. Couch disposal sectional. So previously we didn't have a fee established for that. So when a sectional couch came in, which is significantly larger than a regular couch, we didn't really have a fee schedule to go with. So we were losing money on it. So by establishing a fee, which is really the cost of a couch plus a chair together, we're able to actually charge a correct amount for taking those bigger type couches. And then in the tire section, it's just reducing those prices. We got a really great new contract with tire disposal now. At least at the Willow River Transfer Station here, we're working with Anderson Recycling here in Sandstone. And they don't charge us monthly, for example, to just have the container there and things. And so we are able to reduce those costs because our costs are reduced. And by reducing costs, you truly do get more people to do the right thing with them. So if we can reduce it, it would be great. And so that's running down those tire ones. It's just reducing those costs. And then in zoning, you'll notice there's conditional use permit, interim use permit are currently $600, and we're requesting that they go to $850. When that $600 was established, your fee should cover your costs. And so when we came up with that $600 fee, we thought, okay, well, our zoning board per diems, because there's a public hearing that goes with that, their mileage, the publication in the newspaper. But really, when we established those fees, it didn't account for any of our staff time. And there's a significant amount of staff time that goes into these. So just requesting to change it from $600 to $850. I think in future years, you're probably going to see it come back and make it will be requesting to go higher than that. We're going to hopefully gather some better data here on how much time they truly take, staff time, to put together. Those conditional and interim use permits, those are truly commercial businesses. So a $600 permit versus an $850 permit really to a business should not make or break it. And yet then we don't have the other taxpayers of Pine County subsidizing their permit. Our low interest loan application fee. So you see those on your agenda, a lot of those low interest loans that we do for people's septic systems. And the fee schedule was currently $96, and how that was created back when we started that program in 2016 is we were recording them. So that was $46. And then we had about an hour of staff time on them. So we came up with $96. But when we made that fee, we truly didn't understand the staff time. And so now we have a much better understanding of the staff time. And when most homeowners get these septic loans, one huge benefit they're getting with them is we walk them through the whole process of getting a septic system replaced, because it is a confusing process of get a design, get estimates, get it installed, get your as-built, get your certificate of compliance, and then the payment. So it's a lot of back and forth for staff time. So while we're not recording them that $46 recording fee anymore, there is a significant amount of staff time that's going into these. And so that's why the request to increase it from $96 to $150. Your plats, your final plat and then your preliminary plat, those were right along the lines with the conditional interim use permits at $850, or they were $600, asking to switch them to $850 just due to the staff time that goes into those projects when they come forward. And then the request for map amendment and the variance, you'll notice that they're requested only to go to $650. And the reason those do take variances are, they're kind of standard for us. We do a lot of them, hear a lot of them, so they don't take as much time as those conditional use permits and things where each one is a very intricate thing that we have to gather information on. And with those, a lot of times it's a homeowner thing rather than a business. And so just requesting to change those from $600 to $650. Questions on that fee schedule? Proposed changes?
Okay, no questions here, so we'll open it up for public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on the new fee schedule? Asking one more time, is there anybody from the public who would like to speak for the public fee schedule? No? Okay, we will close the public hearing. County board additional discussion if necessary. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Some of these, I mean, 3 cents to 5 cents. It's doubled. 600 to 850. Yeah, I realize when you start a business, you do have some things to consider and pay. Usually, you pass it on to the customer. The gentleman left. He had a good comment about economic development. Is there any wiggle room on these to get these down a little bit? I guess we're already have the computers and offices and employees, and they work on a lot of the stuff. Anyway, I know we've had a discussion like when we have extra sheriff's deputies, show up in an area. That's usually what I always hear. We already pay for this through our taxes, and now you call it a fee. It's just you're raising it. I mean, some of these seem 3 cents to 5 cents. I think I can say that's about doubling it. If you went to 6, it'd be double.
They all require a public hearing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm speaking on behalf of a few that couldn't be here today. Is there any wiggle room on this?
Right, so the fee schedule is at your pleasure. These are my proposed numbers based on the amounts of staff labor and time that they are taking.
So I'm going to go back to truth and taxation meeting and the people that, when we have to raise taxes because we're paying for people to do these duties, we're not really doing anything for the public and the taxpayers that we have in Pine County. So if we raise the price to compensate for what it's costing us to do that job or to do that, give that benefit, I think it's important that we come out even on that. I don't think that it's our job to pay extra for those. That's my opinion. Does anybody else have any thoughts?
Madam Chair, the 3 cents to 5 cents, that's for those companies that want every piece of data that's in our campus system, right?
Right.
So every piece of property, if they were paying 3 cents for 30,000, now they're gonna be 5 cents times 30,000.
Right.
And so it's a big bunch of data that they're getting pretty doggone cheap.
That they're gonna make money off.
Yeah. And we have to pay for that. So.
Do you send that out digitally or paper?
Right, it all goes digitally.
Go ahead, Josh.
And I would argue to, I'd assume, well, as we've made known for a long time, nothing in the county is money making. This is just trying to offset costs. I would argue that none of this is still, you're not even probably on most of it, just like the sheriff's department having contracts and stuff like that. And we try to provide as much as we can, but yeah, I agree with this.
Are there any other discussion? Once again, any discussion on the fee schedule? All right, can we have a motion to adopt or not adopt?
I'll move the 2025 fee update.
Thanks, Josh. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Steve. Once again, any questions? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Oh, go ahead.
I was in favor. I was
Oh, aye.
a little late.
Sorry.
I was a little late on the thing.
All right, anybody opposed? Motion carried. Personnel committee reports. And that's our additions.
Yeah, we had our meeting yesterday. 3 things. That'll take action. The auditor treasurer, had a separation. Zoning office manager, Megan Duchesne, and they request a backfill of that position and any subsequent vacancies that occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. That position is a grade 8, $26.15 per hour on 2025 wage. It's all contained in the budget. And Madam Chair, is it okay if I take all 3 and vote on it?
Yeah, go ahead.
And the sheriff's office, we acknowledge the resignation of Deputy Sheriff Blake Reichert, effective December 30th. And request backfill of that position and any subsequent vacancies that happen with an internal promotion. That's a grade 10, $31.47 an hour. I'll add there, he just took a job in another department, closer to family and stuff. Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services wants to recruit that additional eligibility worker that was put in the 2025 budget. And then request any backfill or subsequent vacancies that may occur due to the additional internal promotion or transfer. Those are the 3 that take action, and I will recommend approving those.
Thank you, Matt.
I'll second them.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions on this?
Just make a comment.
Yes, please.
I just want to thank Steve for filling in again for me. I had some doctor's appointments I had to go to, so thank you again, and sorry that I couldn't be there, so.
All right, all those in favor for the personnel committee report, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried.
then the other couple other things is, 6 correction officers were hired in December. So that's a good news there, because we had some turnover. I think that's pretty much it, isn't it, Steve? Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Next we have the Pine County Personnel Board of Appeal appointment. Linda Wolf has been doing it for how many years? For 3 years?
3.
Yeah, she does a good job. Are there any questions on appointing Linda Wolf to continue doing for 2025 to 2027?
I'll make a motion to reappoint Linda.
Thanks, Steve.
I'll second.
Gosh. Once again, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Pine County Property Tax Levy and Budget. We have resolution 2024-60, setting the 2025 Pine County levy at 22,786,839, and authorize the chair and the administrator to sign. And then we also have resolution 2024-61, appointing the 2025 Pine County budget as shown as attached budget summary, and authorize the chair and the administrator to sign.
Madam Chair, if I may jump in.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right, Kelly Shorter, County Auditor Treasurer. So the budget and the levy you have before you are very similar to what you saw at the Truth and Taxation meeting. In my board request, I do note a few little changes, but they're very, very minor changes. Talk through them here in just a second. So the opioid fund was budgeted as a surplus, but really all those dedicated funds, we want to budget them at a net zero so that they don't offset our bottom line. So that was corrected. The health insurance and emergency management was reduced by $564. And then we also added some public safety aid expenses and revenue to the sheriff's office budget. So if you recall, the end of 2023 into the 2024 budget, the sheriff's office received a significant one-time funding from the state of Minnesota. And we had a list of projects that funding was going to go to. One of the projects that is not quite done is the gun range improvements. So there's been some expenses paid. However, they're not all paid, and some will carry into next year. So that was a change in the budget, that I increased the expenses by 24,850, but there's revenue, the corresponding revenue, that dedicated revenue we have in the background that pay for that. So it doesn't affect the bottom line, but it is a change.
Thank you.
The other thing that I want to note within the resolutions, you'll note that there's some language regarding the ARPA funds in them. And so we had decided to balance the 2025 general fund budget. We had moved $1 million of expenditure or of revenues from ARPA into the general fund. When that comes to the audit, the auditor will say, show me the invoices you paid with that money, because they need to ensure that it was appropriately spent and that those vendors were correct vendors. And so I had to identify some expenditures that we're going to use that money on. By identifying those specific expenditures, it doesn't mean that they were unbudgeted or anything. They were absolutely budgeted, but I have to be able to give them invoices that we paid with those funds. As I looked at the general fund, giving them less invoices is much easier than giving them 50 invoices. If I could give them 1 or 2, that's a lot easier than here's a whole bunch that equal $1 million. So when I looked at most expenses in just on very limited number of invoices, the most expenses that I had found were the Teamsters health insurance and then the medical services to prisoners contracts and expenditures that we have annually. So within the resolution, you'll note that language in there, that those are the identified expenses that we're paying with that $1 million of ARPA funds. That allows us to pass that audit hurdle of what are we spending that money on specifically within this general fund. So again, it has nothing to do with anything that the sheriff's office with their Teamster insurance is doing or the jail's doing with their medical services to prisoners. It happens that those are the biggest contracts that we have, that we pay. So you have that language within the resolution, and then you'll notice the very last line in that resolution also notes that we any remaining ARPA funds in 2026 would be used for those same expenditures. So by December 31st of 2024, we have to have those expenditures under contract, identified what they are going to be spent for. And so by including that in that resolution, we meet that criteria of we have these things that we've already encumbered those dollars in. So that prevents us from having to send anything back to the feds by having that language in there.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Are there any questions on this? Go ahead, Matt.
I have one. Should we do these separate? So you don't have to produce? Yeah, so not together.
Okay. So are there any more questions on the budget? You're all good with what was presented? So we have resolution 2024-60, setting the 2025 property levy at 22,786,839.
I'll move that.
Thanks, Matt.
Second.
Thanks, Josh. Got a motion by Matt, a second by Josh. Once again, are there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And then resolution 2024-61, authorizing the 2025 Pine County budget is shown as the attached budget summary.
Move that.
Thanks, Matt.
Second.
Thanks, Josh. Motion by Matt, second by Josh. Once again, are there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 2025 sheriff and county attorney salaries. We're considering 2025 salary for Reese, which would be 163,807 effective January 1st, which is a 6% increase. Do you want to do these two separate or do them as one? Separate? Okay. All right, so we will talk about our county attorney, Reese Frederickson first.
I'll move it.
Steve moved
I'll second.
and Josh seconded. Are there any questions on this?
I just had a little discussion.
Okay,
So we did vet this through personnel committee a couple months back. I was actually there. So that's why I'll talk about it. And the county attorney did provide a lot of good information about surrounding county attorney's salaries and kind of where he is and everything like that. It did still put him really in the middle. And we had a lot of discussion about what his office has been doing and how much work. And I don't think there's anybody around that can say that they don't think his office does a great job. It's really been a change for the better, I think, for the county. And I know firsthand that Reese really works tirelessly, not necessarily for a 6% increase or the wage he's getting, but because he truly loves this county and wants to do better for it. And I really appreciate that. And I feel very comfortable doing this. So
well said. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, those other counties, what counties are compared to?
there was, I don't know, 6, 8 different counties. So
I agree. He's got him there.
It's usually the ones surrounding our area, right? So it's comparable counties.
Our neighboring?
It's not Hennepin and Ramsey.
No.
Okay,
Bummer, huh?
Yeah.
San Jose County.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, the counties that I pulled were Isani, Knabec, Aiken, Chisago, Pine, of course, and Carlton. And broke it down by population, years that the county attorney has had as in any type of county attorney's office, number of employees, and then the salaries. And then I took the average of all those and I included adult cases per attorney and then compared the average. And that's how I came up with my request. This is my 10th year. My salary has always been just a bit below the average of the region. And this year, if the trends continue, it's still going to be there. I thank Commissioner Moore's comments. I feel that my staff, my office does a great job and has above average performance in my view. And so I think, well, I should add too that there were significant salary increases for the judges that are 193,000, a public defender in my position, managing attorney that manages less people than I do, makes $185,000 a year. And so county attorneys we're losing county attorneys because people don't want to be prosecutors anymore. The average vacancy is 15% to 35% across the nation in these offices. And so I think I just add that too. And I think it's important to be mindful of the salaries and recruit and keep good people.
I want to add to that, I didn't hear you say that you also try more cases than a lot of the other counties do, because we have less staff in Pine County than a lot of the other county attorneys' offices do. So we get more for less because, like Josh said, they have the heart people here.
Yeah, the minutes for that, there was some errors on the minutes for the personnel for that meeting. Were they ever corrected? We were not gonna get into a procedural issue with anyone I think a motion was made and seconded by the same person, just to make it correct. That we don't go by personnel minutes, we go by board action, correct? So then the minutes don't matter if there's personnel committee minutes don't matter if there was a procedure error.
Yeah, I guess I'm not having them in front of me. I'm not sure what you're specifically referring to understand whether it is significant or not, but absolutely, the county board is the authority for making personnel decisions. The personnel committee recommends actions.
I'd like to say too, JJ, because we did discuss the personnel committee after that meeting and you weren't paying attention, which is why you didn't get to add, at that point in time, I think is when you were going to make that change and say that was done incorrectly, that you had, I think it was Josh made the motion and Josh seconded it, I think is what it was.
Was that it? Was it?
It was somebody, but
Did a report.
Yeah, I think it was on both of them.
yeah, yep.
It's just, the minutes are always what's legal and recorded, right? But it just isn't in that case with the committees. It's always.
Madam Chair, the minutes from the personnel committee do not get reviewed by the personnel committee until after they go to the county board. So what you see are unreviewed, unapproved minutes.
Okay.
And then it seems to be regularly that the personnel committee meets the day before the county board meeting as it did yesterday. And so there is very little time for review. So I certainly, am hopeful that commissioners review them. And if they find errors that are material, we would make a correction. But I think relying on the report that the members provide is the best assurance for what their intention was.
Sure.
All right. We have a motion by Steve and a second by Josh for the salary for Reese Fredrickson. Once again, any more questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carried. Now we're going to consider the 2025 salary for Sheriff Jeff Nelson. On October 7th, the Personnel Committee recommended $148,894 effective January 1st, which is a 6% increase.
I'll move the salary for Sheriff Jeff Nelson.
Thanks, Josh. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Matt. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
I'd like to comment a little bit on this, and this did run through personnel as well, and I was there as well. So I would just like to say that County Sheriff Jeff Nelson did provide similar wage data and comparable study or just, I guess, wage data on that. And I would just like to add that it does put him in the middle to upper side of that and he was very transparent about that. One of the things that was noted, and he brought it to our attention, was that he has been in the position a lot longer than some of the people that were a little lower than him. So that does carry a lot of stuff, or a lot of weight is what, thank you, as far as that goes, because that is part of it. One of the things we did look at was some of the deputies, the sheriff does not get overtime. He's technically on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. that is his job, and that's what he signs up for. And signed up a couple times for it. So I would just say that, and some of the deputies were pushing in with some overtime and stuff like that at getting, not close to this, but up there a little bit, and you do want to have that little bit of separation there as far as wages go. And I will add, as anybody could see, that Sheriff Nelson does not do it for the money. I don't think any of us would take this wage for a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year job. And the stuff that they have to do, that he specifically has to do on a daily basis, is, you can keep it. You don't have to worry about me running for that position. I'll take my little cut of what I'm doing. But again, he specifically does it for the love of this county. He lives in this county. His family's in this county. He's trying to make it a better place. And I think over the last 10 years that this has been going on, I truly think it shows, so I appreciate it. And yeah, I guess I'll shut up. Sorry.
Thanks, Josh. Is there any other questions or comments on this?
Yeah, I can mirror a lot of that for both positions. I just, again, struggle with the paying for it.
Do I have you correct that you want to have the services, but you don't want to pay? Is that what you're saying? You want the services, but you don't want to pay for it?
Just commending on them, commending them for their good job.
Okay, all right. All right, so we have a motion by Josh, a second by Matt for Sheriff Jeff Nelson's salary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carried. 2025 non-union, non-elected wage adjustments.
Madam Chair, members of the board. So the non-union employees are not represented by an exclusive representative, so they don't negotiate with you for their pay. Typically, the county board has maintained parity with the settled agreements. We have 9 of 10 collective bargaining agreements settled at a 5% cost of living. We are scheduled for mediation with the one unit that we do not have a contract settled for 2025. And so the recommendation is to follow the pattern of settlement with a 5% cost of living increase for the non-union, non-elected employees.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll move that.
Thanks, Matt.
I'll second.
Thanks, Josh. Got a motion by Matt, a second by Josh. Are there any questions on this?
Yeah, you.
Go ahead, JJ.
Just like the difference between the 5 and 6, why isn't there consistency with the amounts?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Waldham. So for the elected sheriff and the elected attorney, they are not on a performance pay or a step system. The union employees are primarily on a step system. Some of them are on a pay for performance. And then for the non-union, they're on a pay for performance plan. So employees not at the top of the scale would potentially receive an adjustment at their anniversary date during the year. The sheriff and the attorney do not get that.
Good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, all those in favor of the 5% cost of living for non-union, non-elected positions, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. County Commissioner compensation per diems and mileage.
Madam Chair, members of the board, before you is resolution 2024-62. It makes no changes to the compensation or the per diem from 2024 to 2025. It does set the mileage rate at the IRS rate. The IRS, to my knowledge, has not set the 2025 rate. So that may or may not go up or down as the IRS adjusts it. But otherwise, there would be no changes if you adopt the resolution as it's presented.
Go ahead, Josh.
I want to have a little discussion on this. When is the last time we seen any increase?
I think 2 years ago.
2 years ago? Okay, and that was on, and I think it was a 2 or 2.5%.
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
I think it was like 2 years ago.
I believe it was, kind of followed Social Security's raise at the time, it was about 2.5%.
And the per diem rate was set before I got on this board. So that's 10 years old or.
It was changed once since I've been on the board 18 years.
Okay.
It was changed once and the salary changed twice since I've been on the board.
Okay.
So
And I guess my discussion is not that a 2% or whatever is gonna make a whole lot of difference. I don't think any of us are gonna go buy a brand new vehicle, because you get it or whatever have you, but I just wanna be conscious of what sometimes I think we lose a little sight of that, and then it stays so low that then all of a sudden, if a person was gonna do anything, it's kind of a big jump, but, and I'm comfortable obviously with where it is, but I don't know, just thoughts on, like to have actually some discussion. I'm guessing you have some, JJ, or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
Madam Chair, I appreciate what you're saying, Josh, because I think, I don't think any of us signed up for this to make money. But, the compensation level, to be what it was 18 years ago roughly. I don't even know what the dollar amount is right now, but,
I can tell you, because it's right here. So for county commissioners, it's $22,281, and for the board chair, it's $23,505.
okay. So I think we all struggle with that because basically you're giving yourself a raise and nobody likes to do that. But,
And just to add a little discussion, do you want to put it, I know some counties, their actual salary is higher, but they don't have per diems. So it don't matter how many meetings you go to or not. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think actually going to a meeting and participate, is pretty important, you know? We all are on some and we, sometimes you go, sometimes you don't, sometimes you have stuff going on, but to think any board or committee that you're on is not important is I don't know, so maybe.
I'm comfortable with the switch, with the balance we have of per diems and salary. I think it would be, I've said it before several years ago, maybe we should kind of tie it to, because half of us are on social security, probably tie it to something related to that, the CPI, like we do with the garbage rate. Once we started doing that, everybody knew what was gonna happen. And if it's 2%, it's 2%. If it's 3%, it's 3%. But I'm comfortable leaving it the way it is, and I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Steve to leave it the way it is.
I'll second.
Second by Matt.
Madam Chair?
Uh-huh.
So the motion was to adopt the resolution?
Yes.
As it is, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry. So we have a motion by Matt, or Steve, a second by Matt. Is there any questions or comments further on that? Go ahead.
Just going forward, I know we do talk about it every year. A lot of times we just run it through. Is that something maybe we want to address a little in personnel?
Yeah, I think we should look at it. And I don't even, quite frankly, I don't know where we line up with the neighborhood anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And to be honest, I think none of us care, but I'm looking for future.
Yeah.
Just to make it, so it is somewhat attractive to people to, run. I don't think there's a disconnect that any of us want to do this for free or anything, or maybe some do. I don't know, but I think then you get a little bit in the weeds of what's the purpose as well. So I think everybody that does a good job should be compensated some fairly, so.
All right, we got a motion by Steve, a second by Matt to leave the county commissioners as is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Establish a citizen board and committee per diems. So right now we have for our board members that are on the zoning board, HHS Advisory Committee, Pine County Chemical Health, Extension Committee, Library, Community Health Advisory Committee, County HRA, and Probation Advisory Committee, they get $75 per meeting to attend, and then mileage reimbursement per the IRS rate. Is there any thoughts or questions on that pay schedule?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Okay, so we got Matt and Josh. Any questions?
This is unchanged.
It is unchanged, yes. Yeah,
And I think we did make some headway a year or two ago on that.
okay. So keeping it as is for $75 per meeting for those committees. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Meeting with legislatures.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the legislative session starts early in January, I think maybe like the 12th or 13th, somewhere in there. And so I did reach out to our legislators to see if they were interested in meeting with any commissioners, and they offered, Senator Rarick and Representative Dotseth offered 10 a.m. on December 30th as a time that would work for them. And then Representative Nelson offered January 10th at 10 a.m. And I tried to get them all together, but their schedules were a little bit wild. And so if you're interested in identifying some commissioners to meet with them on those dates, that's December 30th at 10 a.m. For Rarick and Dotseth, and Friday, January 10th at 10 a.m. with Nelson. I would confirm those back, or if those dates absolutely don't work, we can try to find some alternate dates.
I would have to be on the phone on the 30th.
I think it needs to be in person. I think this is one of those that you need to see.
I-
But I think it's only
I'm
two
not
commissioners. I think it's only two commissioners. I don't think it was meant to be a medium. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
I think we have found that we get different conversations when they come to the county board meeting to report versus when there is a less than a quorum meeting that talks about expectations for the session.
I did it last year, and I think I did it the year before too.
I would like to do it. I've got a lot of stuff from the district meeting that needs to be presented. I think we need to have AMC at that table also. So if we can.
I've sent those
Sure you
dates
did.
to Matt Hilgart. I have not heard.
I'm sure somebody will be there for them.
What were the dates again? I'm sorry.
It's
December 30th, 10 a.m. and January 10th, 10 a.m. And so if you have the agenda request, it's the top date and the bottom date.
So I can't be there for the 10th because I'm only the
Yep.
6th, but I'd like to be there on the 30th, if that's okay with everybody.
Are we setting who as well right now, or?
Yes.
Okay. The 30th, I'm sure I can do it, because I'm just looking at all my stuff and I don't have nothing on that day.
You and Terry on the 30th?
And then who wants to go on January 10th? Would it be you and JJ, are you in town on the 10th or are you gone?
I guess I would like to check with Roger Nelson, or if Dave could, to see if he wanted to take the 10th, and I would not to them if Roger wanted to. If that's okay.
Or Matt?
Or do we want Matt and Josh? We need people that know what's going on right now, not somebody that's coming in. And I'm speaking for myself if I was coming in. I think it's important that we have people, because we're talking to them about what our legislative issues are. Which is, you're not going to have those issues if you're not part of what's going on right now.
If he could still reach out to Roger just in case, then I'd give up my position for him. If there's such a thing as a position, but I just think it would be right to ask Roger.
I could do the 10th, and I don't know if Matt, you could. You do the 10th?
January?
Yeah.
I have no idea, but put me down. I'll go. Okay. I have to look, but I don't think I have things scheduled.
I'll make do you want a motion on this?
Please.
Okay, so on December 30th at 10 a.m., it would be myself and Terry. And on January 10th at 10 a.m., it would be myself and Matt. Commissioner Ludwig. I'll make a motion for them too.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Josh, a second by, by Steve. I had it right the first time. Any more discussion?
Am I in?
Do we on alternates?
I think that the people that we're setting it up for right now are committing to being there. Okay,
No trouble sending Roger if one of these two can make it.
okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. January 7th, organizational meeting. Okay.
Yeah, this is just the statute is very specific on the day, but it's silent on the time. And so I just like to put in the universe an agreed upon time, 10 o'clock at the courthouse, if that works for folks.
Normal meeting date, normal meeting time, normal meeting place. Motion by Josh.
I'll second it,
Second by,
but I will be remote.
any questions on meeting on that date?
I will be remote also. So, yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Just make sure you get your remote places to Debbie before the meeting so that you're set to go.
Yep,
All right, commissioner updates. We've got the employee potluck.
it was
Oh,
good.
wait, do we want to do this first? Or do we want to do it towards the end?
She's holding up the courthouse security, the district court security
Let's do
update.
this first. Let's do this, the court security update first.
Well, I'll give you the general scoop, okay?
Okay,
We got $13,000 in the grant. None of the grant dollars can be applied to personnel.
how much weren't we asking for quite a bit more?
Oh, a lot more, because we wanted to add personnel. I can't remember the exact number, but it was much more than that. 60 or 80 or something, I can't remember. Yeah.
So we got how much again?
Everybody was asking. There was only so much time. So if you have this sketch. So this is the entry into the courthouse. So if you're looking at it from the bottom, the left side is gonna become the exit. You won't be able to enter from the outside, it'll be locked. But if you come, the fire door will work, so be able to go, and then everybody's gonna have to come in on the right side. And then the proposed thing is to put a desk there. And then there'll be a uniform presence sitting right there. We're gonna add cameras that will have pictures from every possible angle of people coming and going, just in case something does happen. So we can buy equipment with that, so that'll be there. And then that other desk over here is just an option. This is just, it hasn't been decided where they're gonna sit yet. And it's gonna be uniform only, not at this point. I would prefer to have it armed. We just don't have those dollars yet. What good does it do?
With at least a taser?
What's that?
Maybe armed with at least a taser?
I don't know that. That'll be whatever they have, the bailiffs have, so.
Okay.
And it will not be manned all the time. There's some increased manning in their budget for 2025, which we approved. For increased security in the courthouse. Also included in this plan is sweeps of the building. I think 2 times a day, 1 time a day, whatever it is, it's gonna be, but there's gonna be a general sweeps. To look through, backpacks or anything else out of place, or make sure all the doors are locked, or if there's an open closet, get it checked out and stuff like that. That's part of the plan. And then if you go up the steps to the courthouse, that staff will still be there, and that's where if there's a trial going on, or high profile, the metal detectors and all that'll still sit up there.
That's right.
So-
Metal detector.
Yeah, up here, yep, come up those steps. So in the end, I don't know, in today's world, if you said we're gonna do this when I first started, I'd say you're crazy, it's a Publix building, but the way things are, we have to think about this.
Yeah.
Because if something happens and we know what's been going on in the world and we've been sitting here trying to do nothing, we'd look kind of stupid, to put it bluntly. So at least it's a step in the right direction. And I think, you remember when Kristen Martin was here, meetings ago, I asked her, and she was not comfortable still. So, and I also think that we've always felt there was a balance, with the public walking in and out and being screwed, they're not gonna go through a metal detector there. But if they're going up in the courthouse, they will. So and I think people are gonna be happy, maybe, I think it's not gonna be bothered by somebody sitting, there. He's not gonna frisk them, he's just gonna be watching when they're there. So in one way, it provides some comfort, I think, for someone coming into a building. And another way, I'm sure they'll say, what are we wasting money on that for? You know, you're gonna get both. But I don't know. So that's just the proposals, so we're wide open for discussion.
It would start.
Oh, I want to add one more thing. I think before we do all this, we'll probably bring it to facilities too, to help iron out some detail. You know, and I'd make that recommendation now that we kick this to facilities for some discussion, okay? If that's all right with you guys. Just like, make sure we get the layout right with everybody in, because it's gonna involve facilities. So.
Gosh, I can tell by that you have something
I
to
just
say.
had a couple comments. Yesterday I was down at, the Mayo Clinic and they have security.
Yes.
I mean, and how many entrances do they have and everything? And that's a hospital. I mean, what, you know, they're not pissed off about their taxes or their child being taken away or anything have you. I think it really does make a lot of sense.
I noticed over in St. Cloud, and you heard me talk about before, all their government buildings, even the license center, and then we have meetings, the EMS meetings will be in there. And for 2 years, almost 3, it's 2+ years, they had 2 deputies manning metal detectors in that building going on. That got expensive. So that went away for them too. But their courthouse is still secure.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just 2 comments. One, the proposal is within the current approved budget for court security. And so if you recall the budget discussion, Rod did ask for a little bit of a bump. And so his budget for court security went from 107,000 in 2024 to 160, I think it's 163,000 in 2025. And so there is a little money for an increase in staffing. And so it is in the budget that you just approved. And then appreciate the opportunity for facility committee to review, because there's obviously, some minor improvements that will be required, signage, et cetera. So we'll work through all of those.
So I don't think, that doesn't need to be emotional, correct? That's just, we know, thank you for the comment. It will go to facilities.
So I just want to ask, well, all the commissioners here, and I think we need to be open-minded about at some point. If I'm going to be blunt, if somebody comes through that door, even with a uniformed guy sitting there and walks in with a shotgun, he's not going to stop. I tell you, that person's not going to be stopped until there's somebody sitting there with a weapon. So that still exists. But
I think we all sit in shock thinking we shouldn't have to do this, but you think about a Christian school where you think that you would be completely safe and they just had murder suicide there. It's depression and mental illness it's a big issue right now. And we need to consider that and be considerate of it. But I think of our employees, I remember telling Jerry years ago, if somebody comes in there and starts shooting, because I'm taking their property on county because they're not doing anything to protect us. So even thinking back then, we need to protect our employees.
I'd also like to add, whenever there is a whole high-profile case, we know it is, even with law enforcement, they staff up different. The jail is supported by deputies, so when they can foresee that kind of problem, it's not, they or even if it could be, they have that presence there.
Yeah.
So whenever that's happening, we already have that covered. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Sheriff, they do take care of that one.
Thanks for doing that, Matt. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the beginning and we'll do employee hotline. Steve, I know you were there.
I was there and I ate too much. It was really good. I would encourage commissioners, if at all possible, to try to attend some of those events, to rub shoulders with the people that in those offices. It's pretty good. Anyway.
Wellness Scare, did anybody make it there? I made it in the door.
I didn't.
And it was phenomenal. The setup that they had, the things that they had going on. The thought that went into that wellness fair was amazing. It was big. It was a good show, a good thing. And just, we know that if we can keep our employees healthier, our insurance is gonna stay low, which is a big benefit for all of us. Facilities committee was canceled. Annual conference, anybody want to talk about the annual conference?
I go, or if you wanna go.
I went to several sessions, but the one that I remembered the most was the cybersecurity. And I'm happy that I work where I do, and we got an IT department that has been leading the charge and trying to keep us on the straight and narrow, and they send those stupid little tests out to us. Even though we grumble, Ryan, we still appreciate the end result. And we all know the biggest threat that we have are all of us, everybody that works, because if somebody clicks on something that isn't right, it shows up and the whole county is paying the price. So,
Brian, on that, how can you just restate how many hits people try to get us with on a daily basis? A day that is coming into our staff for them to hit the wrong button. That's big. That is big.
I'd just like to comment on that. How big a thing it is I think every breakout time had at least one, if not two, cybersecurity things. I didn't go to any because I know Ryan's working his butt off. He didn't. But you wanna go more?
I'll stop for now.
I just wanted to say, I went on one on cannabis, and it was cannabis use and prevention by public health. I learned a lot. There was a lot of stuff on there I didn't realize they talked about back when in the 60s or whatever. Literally it was ditchweed, 1% THC. Now a lot of it is up to 18%. And a lot of the products you get are 80-90% THC. One of the things they're working on is trying to get some stuff like the packaging. It looks like Sour Patch Kids and Dorito. They have Doritos, I think, even, or look like Doritos. The flavors, and I think they went through this with like the vapes and stuff. The flavors end of it were what they're trying to maybe, hopefully they can change some of that. But again, it was showing us how poorly thought out this law was. And again, we're trying to deal with the consequence of it. The biggest thing I got from, well, two of the biggest, or first biggest thing was, I talked to a lot of people, a lot of other commissioners from around the state. What kind of, and the networking part, that's what I truly like about AMC, is networking with other commissioners in different areas. Some of the problems they're having, some of the issues they're facing. And I just look back to how fortunate I am to be in Pine County. We have really great staff. We're doing a lot of good things, and we got good people everywhere, and I really do I do enjoy it. The other thing I thought was awesome is our board chair received an award, and it was by the president of AMC, and it was very interesting because you don't know you're getting the award. I didn't know she was getting the award. A very few select people knew that she was getting it. And the president of AMC has opportunity in their year to pick up to two people. Sometimes they pick one, sometimes they pick two. And our president this year picked Terry Lubgren for that presidential award. And it literally took him, 5 minutes to say everything that you've done. It was awesome to have a commissioner from Pine County to be selected for that. I just really appreciate it. So that was a lot of fun to be part of that. And thank you for what you did.
Well, I just have to add that I wouldn't have been able to earn that award if you guys hadn't allowed me free rein to do what I felt was important to be done. And I can honestly say that because of your support, we have lowered our out-of-home placements, which is going to save us tax dollars. And we're going to continue with that. We have been able to work with our tribes, which is going to create that community where we can continue to work together. There's so many things that we're able to happen because you guys were supportive of that. So thank you. Thank you for your support in that. It's still incredible to think of that award. Yeah, just say that.
Can I say something else about that?
Sure.
And I actually jotted down some notes.
Oh my.
I don't do that often, but I was very proud to be there when Terry got that award. And Terry, I want to thank you for making me a better commissioner, and thanks for caring. You obviously care about what you were doing. Thanks for your tireless work on such things as broadband. You know, we had wallowed around with broadband for about 14 years, and I was beginning to think it was never going to change. And I think in January, we're going to get a update with all the people that have worked on broadband here from Leslie's putting something together, and we can kind of see where we're really at with the changes we've made since 2020, basically. But the Family Resource Center, you know, I think we can pin that hat on you. And it's starting a conversation with moving some trust land into Pilt. And I hear that conversation going on now around AMC and NACO because of your work there. We're just going to pick that up, and I think there's some possibilities there. Your tireless work on the library board, jobs and training, the shack, and I can't even remember. I started trying to remember all the boards you go to, but you didn't just go to meetings. You went there and said, let's change this. Let's move the needle on this. And last week when we met with the people with the tribal sovereign nations from around the state, met right down here in Hinckley, you said we need to have these meetings so we sit across the table from each other and look each other in the face, and we can tell what people are thinking and saying. That's how we're going to get things done. And I appreciate that, Terry, for what you've done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving forward. No. JJ, I see you have your book out. Did you have some things you wanted to add about the conference?
No, I'm good, thank you.
I have some things. Being on the executive committee, there's a new thing that's come out. It's called SAVVY. It's Student Loan Benefits for Counties and their Employees. This is where if you work for the county and you have financial aid, you're paying your school bills. It's a good way to get that help on that. You know, so if they're working for government, they can have that debt forgiven. So it's a new SAVVY program. And the thing that's nice about this is if we utilize this, it's part of AMC, and then AMC gets some of the funds back, which will keep our dues down with AMC. I think Jackie said that we have a similar program right now. Hennepin County talked about this, and they've been using it for, I think, 2 years, and they've saved their employees millions of dollars through this program. It costs the county $150 per employee that signs up for it, but it helps with your employee retention. So we'll be able to not have so many people leaving because they know that that's a big benefit, having your finances kind of taken care of for your college. So I'm going to pass this back on to Jackie, and you guys can all deal with that. Another one that they talked about was Binti, which is software built for child welfare. And I'll pass this over to Debbie, or not to Debbie, but to Becky. And we'll see if that's something that would benefit our county. I did go to a meeting about the new African American Family Preservation Act, because I don't know the whole thing. It's
Waiting for that.
long. It's, like you guys talked about, it's gonna cost our county a minimum of $1.5 million, and we're one of the smaller counties. It's extremely expensive. The program that they have to use is the SSIS system, which does not work. And it will not work for the majority of what this program is gonna require from our employees. So it's gonna be our employees doing the work and then manually transferring that information over, because we don't have a system that will transfer it. They're gonna have to manually transfer everything. So what takes 45 minutes extra for every family or for every person entered into the SSIS, we can at least double that and what it's gonna take for this Family Preservation Act.
Why can't they just give them access to the system? They can pull it out.
We have to do it.
Yeah,
Our workers.
they won't do it, but we can't even get all this information into the system. So we really need to get the SSIS system fixed, which I did do some finding out on that one too. There's a Minute department within the state, and Minute is the one that's been holding it up. And so I talked to Kathy Shavers the other night when we were at the casino with the tribes. And she goes, oh, I know the department head there. I'll get that door open. And so, and that's one of those things where we've got that relationship, and God, they know so much more than we do with these people. So anyways, we need to continue working with Minute to get that done. And that's one of the things we need our representatives to start working on too, and get them to acknowledge that. But this act, we need, Hennepin and Ramsey have been doing the initial one on it to figure out how it works and how it's gonna work. And they've already spent all of the money that's been given to them, which I think was like $4 million. And it just started this year. They're gone through it and they're on their own now. So there's gonna be no money available to do this. So it's big. So both of those working together are a huge thing for where we're at. So those were two of the ones that I went to. Here's the priority list for AMC. Did you all get to see this? One of the top ones that we have is solid waste. Solid waste was not one that was voted on at our district meetings. However, we were all talking about the importance of where we're at with our landfills. We have issues, and it's gonna be crazy. I bought a refrigerator probably 10 years ago, and the guy asked me if I wanted an extended warranty, and I said, no, they last forever. And he said, they're made to last 8 years. So you got a huge refrigerator that's gonna last 8 years, and then it goes into the facility. How does that happen? You know, it's just not gonna work. So I've got this list, but you can look at it, but I need it back, because this is some of the stuff we're gonna be talking to our representatives about on the 30th. I think that was the majority of what I had from that meeting. So East Central Regional Library Trustees Board, I did not make it because I was down at AMC. The Soil and Water Conservation District.
I did not attend.
Kettle River Upper.
We had our meeting, it was just pretty much a general meeting, updating and moving the general stuff forward. No major spending, no major decision.
Shack. I didn't make much of Shack either, because I went to the tribal meeting instead, because I thought that was more important. But they did election of officers. Brooke Cunningham, the Commissioner of Health, spoke and talked about the things. Another big thing that they were talking about is the water, but it's southeastern Minnesota, I think, where they have so much, their wells are contaminated. Law library meeting.
I 100% spaced it, so I did not make it. I don't know did you guys have a quorum? I think you did, didn't you?
I was in federal prison
Oh,
at the time, so
You missed it too. Okay, so
I didn't have my cell phone to tell my plate.
I did read that, yes. I got the after email. So.
They might not have had
You made parole.
tribal leaders and AMC. Do you want to go, Steve?
We met last week. It's good to meet those tribal leaders face to face. I got the feeling some of them don't quite understand that there's been a lot of work already been done. I think everybody there from the county side was trying to point that out. And, I think, you know, some of these topics seem to go round and round and round, and I don't know if we're ever gonna get to the point where they have the capacity to do the initiative tribe ideas that they had a couple of years ago, that every tribe was gonna be an initiative tribe, and I just don't know that the capacity is there to do it. Maybe we have to figure something else out, but.
I don't think the desire for a lot of the tribes to have an initiative tribe is there. I know Mille Lacs backed off.
I think so.
So what we met about was what we can work on together legislatively.
Yeah.
And we came up to a lot of things. They were right on with the solid waste, the issues that we're gonna have with solid waste. They're willing to help us with the SSIS and with the family preservation. Their big concern with the African American family preservation is that that's gonna take their tribal children to the bottom of the pile again. So we're gonna be so busy making sure that we do the African American law, which isn't just, you know, I think that a lot of counties looked at it and thought African American, we don't have that many African Americans in our county, but it's anybody who lives below a poverty level, which is almost everybody in Pine County, which is why it's gonna cost us so much. So when they look at that and think that every child within the county is gonna be on this act, their children will not be getting their needs met. So that's a huge thing for them. They are very concerned about that new statute and that the new laws that are coming about. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. Central Minnesota Jobs and Training, I brought the book and I gave it to Josh, who's going to give it to Dave, he said. But it just will give you kind of an idea of where things are at with Central Minnesota Jobs and Training. As you know, we have new leadership now in that committee, and they are very transparent. And so they've got all their financials in there as to where they are. They want to make sure that whoever looks at it realizes that when it says that they're in the hole, that it's the same thing as our highway department. You pay it and then you'll get it back. So we've got that coming back for us. Dial-A-Ride.
Dial-A-Ride is gonna be this Friday instead of last Friday.
Okay. Are there any others?
It's called the Dynamic Transportation Meeting. I got appointed by AMC to be the county representative to that. And we met in person last month and we met over Zoom yesterday. And there will be a report coming out probably by the end of January. You'll all can get a copy. It's only 45 pages long, John. But the big issue they're trying to get at is we've worked really hard in across the state to keep people in their homes, people my age and older. But our volunteer drivers has gone to zip, not just in Pine County, every place. So how do we get Aunt Mabel to the doctor and to wherever they need to go to, the bank and Walmart or wherever?
Neighborhood transit.
Yeah, that's one answer. And actually, I got to sit next to the guy that runs the transit system in Wright and Sibley and McLeod County. And they have a lot of people in a compact area. They actually do that. They have Dial-A-Ride to every corner of their counties.
Wow.
Maybe that's what we really need to go after. And that's what we're gonna go. But on the other side of me was a guy from Chicago that is a manager for Lyft. And I said, I can't get a Uber or a Lyft in Pine City. Oh yeah, they're available every place. I said, look on your little app and tell me if there's a car available. Oh, no, there's not. But I said, maybe that's another thing we can think of is incentivizing them so a guy could afford to be a Uber driver, a Lyft driver in Willow River, Sandstone, Pine City. And so the general public could use it, but when we needed to use it for medical assistant rides, they'd be available for that too. So that's what this whole committee thing is looking at, is how do we, and of course, the legislature only gave us money to have some meetings and come up with ideas. And then they're gonna develop some pilot projects, but of course, they didn't give any money to run the pilot projects, let alone the projects, but I think you hit the nail on the head there, JJ. We got a solution. We just gotta be smart enough to figure out how to fund it to make it work.
Any others? I want to add to CMJTS real quick. One of the things that they talked about is that there is a higher number of youth that are being used in sex trafficking. And so I asked them, how many youth have they worked with? So keep in mind, they do cover a bigger area, but they have worked with 12 youth that have been used for human trafficking in our region, which is huge. And they said that that's just whoever's been given to them through the Hope Foundation to work with. So that's not even all the kids that they've, but yeah, it's big and it's ugly. We need to be aware of it. I did have a meeting with Pokegama Lake Association. Kathy came, and then Dave, our new zoning administrator, to talk about, you probably saw in the newspaper that Pokegama Lake's gonna get nanobubbles. They have raised over $50,000 over the past couple of months to go towards these nanobubbles. And then they're gonna be doing they're gonna be doing the north part of Pokegama Lake, that North Bay. That's where they're gonna be doing their work first. And then if that works, then they'll be going more into the whole lake to see what they can get done. It was interesting because Dave came up with a bunch of research that said that maybe nanobubbles isn't the best thing to do. And Kathy, who has also done a bunch of research, said, well, and we're moving forward. So it's going to be, we're going to be able to see what nanobubbles will do and if it will help clean the lake and the mud and the stuff on the North Bay of Pokegama Lake coming forward. That's my others.
Well, I got one more other, and I know this doesn't even compare to some of the awards you've received in the last couple of weeks, but I would just like to, this is a certificate of appreciation for Terry Lovegren, in recognition and appreciation of your service as chair on the Pine County Board of Commissioners for the 2024. And with that, I know I already said a few things, but I would just like to add, in the last 4 years, that you've been on the board, you've given me, like echoed what Steve said, made me a better commissioner. You've given me some understanding. I know, Terry, man, you were on so many committees and went to so many meetings, and you kind of, I thought about it a lot, and right away I was like, well, how come you're on so many? What are you doing? You know, and all this stuff. But I realized after that you have to be at the table. And I knew that, but maybe it took a little bit more. You have to be at the table on these committees to actually achieve things and make things better. And I just appreciate what you've done, not only this last year, but the 4 years that you've been on this board, and brought Pine County to a better place. And this is for you, and I just want to thank you again. So you will be missed.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's not saying bye sucks. Well, with that, we've done everything we have. You've got upcoming meetings coming up. Your meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful